So here we are, explain the ways that soil is important to earth. And you notice that I have my pens ready to go because we color code, as you know. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the passage, explain the ways that soil is important to earth. And when I go to the passage, I'm going to train my students when they're working with me during the school year to pick up their red pen and we're going to summarize the text. And that's the first thing we do. Now on the test, they have tools where they can highlight with on their notes, but I don't like that. I'll tell you, I do not like that. I think it's confusing to students. It's one more thing that they have to do. And so I don't like using the digital tools. What I prefer, and of course you have to do what you think is best for your students, and I'm just telling you what I prefer. I prefer to tell the students that they need to ask for 3 to 5 sheets of blank paper and for them to pretend that the blank paper is the other screen, that they have 2 screens, one to write their final draft on and the blank paper to do all of their pre-writing. Just as students need paper to do their mathematical solutions, pre-writing is best done, I think, on paper, especially at the young age. Do I use pre-writing on paper? No, I compose straight off the computer, but I'm also in my 60s and have been doing this a long time. So it's best, I think, for students to pre-write on paper. And I agree, too many tempting distractions is exactly right with the digital tools. So right here, I'm going to teach my students to summarize this text. And so it says, put on your boots, go outside and dig. What do you find? Did you say dirt? That's true, but you could also say soil. Soil is the word scientists use for dirt. And so what I'm going to do is right here, and typically I'll take a paragraph and summarize. I won't summarize every sentence at all, but I'll take a paragraph or a section and summarize it. So right here, I would write soil equals dirt. Now, don't worry about not having this printed out, because what I have the students do after I teach them how to do this on paper is I have them write source one, because in many tests, like for the SBAC in California, the performance task, 3rd graders have to write an essay with 3 sources. So I always put source 1, source 2, source 3, but source 1. So I'm going to teach them here, but on the day of the test, I'm going to have them go through on 1 sheet of paper, and I'm going to have them write soil equals dirt, and I have them bullet it. And so it says, we've already read this, but I mean, soil equals dirt, so that's the summary. And then soil covers most of Earth's land. It stretches under grass and in gardens. Soil also lies beneath sidewalks and roads. Sandy beaches are a kind of soil, so are muddy riverbanks and forest floors. And so this is simply about where we find soil. Life-giving soil. Soil brings life to earth. Now that kind of sounds important. So I'm thinking about that ECR. Soil brings life to earth. Plants dig their roots deep down to find water and food. Many animals live in soil too. Wiggling worms and burrowing groundhogs could not live without it. You couldn't live without soil. Plants need soil to grow. Animals eat plants, and without soil, there would be no food. This is very important material for the ECR. I can see that because I read what the ECR is asking. So I'm excited about this because I know that some important aspects of this is that it brings life. I like that it brings life. That plants and animals live in the soil. These are the things that I took from it. That we couldn't live, none of us could live, we couldn't live without it. And I'm going to teach my students abbreviations like this, even though I don't want them to do it on the test. And then it provides food. So all of that's very important. This is an important section right here for my ECR. But let's see what else we have. There might be more. So I don't want to stop right here. So what are the magic ingredients in soil? And what you would be doing is, or my students would be doing, is they would be just going through listing it this way, see? But you have it in the chat to print out if you want to use it later. So what are the magic ingredients in soil? Soil is made up of rocks, air, and water. Soil is also filled with what's left over of dead plants and animals after they've rotted away. So that's a lot of information. So I think I'll just start out writing that instead of reading that whole thing right now. I know that I need to write that it's made of rocks, air, water, and dead plants. So that's what it's made of. Falling leaves, twigs, and dead bugs land on the ground. As they rot, they change into rich black humus, right? And so these dead plants, right, turn into black humus. And when I'm working with my students, I'll teach them how to underline on the text. We call this annotating a text. And it's important because turn into black humus when rotted. Because I like to teach them to only select the most important points. So up here, I would have just grabbed that it brings life, right? And so I teach my students to underline less than 5 words in a row, that I don't want them to underline or highlight the whole sentence. I want them to look for the words that are really, really important, right? So animals live in soil. That's good, right? And we couldn't live without soil, right? Plants need to grow. Animals eat plants, right? There would be no food. So I'm going to train my students to be very discerning readers when it comes to preparing on that day. Hold on, somebody's trying to come in. Now, where we left off is hummus or humus might not sound tasty to you, but it's like food for plants, right? So down here, I'll put equals food for plants. And then at the end, it says, but most of the dirt that slips through your fingers is actually tiny bits of rock. At one time, these tiny rocks were parts of big rocks. And so I'll write tiny rocks. When the multiple choice questions start being asked, I'll know which section to go to. And now we have how soil forms. And if you want, with the sections, you can also write things like soil forms, right? So if you wanted to write the sections, that would be fine also. And so rain, snow, ice, and sunlight break the big rocks down into tiny pieces of rock. This can take thousands of years. Then the rock pieces mix with the humus or humus to form the soil you see. And so we've got these big rocks. I have bullets, and they break over thousands of years. And they form soil. And if I want to add that it's rain, snow, and ice with also sunlight, then I would just highlight that. That's what breaks them up. And then I go to this next page. And it says sand, silt, and clay. 3 kinds of tiny rocks make up soil. They are sand, silt, and clay. And so I'll write sand, silt, and clay right here. Because when a multiple choice question asks about it, I'll know right where to go. And then we always tell our students there can be some really important information in these graphs or art, whatever's, visual. So let's make sure that we look at it. That loose and rough, the type of soil is sand, which is loose and rough, commonly near or in bodies of water. Sand is an important part of concrete. So in my mind, I'm thinking that sand is used to make concrete, because I'm thinking about that's important. I'll think about all the concrete we have all over the place. That the silt is light and dusty, moves easily in flowing water, and much of the soil in the United States has silt. And so the silt is found in water and most soil. That's how I summarize it. And then we've got clay, which is sticky and smooth, becomes hard once it loses water. Many people use clay to make pottery. Ooh, I'm excited about that because now I can say clay is used to make pottery. Now, what I do is I teach my students to embed the quotations rather than paraphrase. But in 3rd grade, sometimes that's a little bit above their ability. But certainly by 5th grade, they should be using quotation marks. So it's okay not to do it in 3rd grade, I think. And I've seen high scores without their doing it. I just like the quotations as opposed to paraphrasing, especially with AI scoring. I think it's important that we use the direct quotations from the text. Sandy soil is coarse and loose. It won't hold much water. Smooth, sticky soil has lots of clay. When this soil dries out, it becomes as hard as concrete. Plant roots can't grow. So sand, coarse and loose. Clay, smooth and sticky. Hard for plants to grow. And then the silt, it is it said up that it's light and dusty. It said it was light and dusty in the graph up here, light and dusty, and it dries out. That's all I need to know about that. And then I come to my 3rd page. So what kind of soil is just right for growing plants? It has more sand and silt and less clay. It has the same amount of air and water, and it is rich in humus or humus. So over here, I'm just going to write sand and silt, good for plants. Somebody look up HUMUS and tell me how to pronounce it correctly. Should have done that before I did this, but I was just doing it quietly and wasn't saying it aloud. Would somebody look that up for me? So when I come over here, all of my notes are here. And as I'm looking at my multiple choice, I can look at my notes, and that way I don't have to go back to the text. I can go back to the text, but I don't have to. And so I'm training my students to be good readers and to take good notes and to do what we call summarizing. So when we come back to the prompt and it says, because I'm not going to do the SCR, I thought I'd just do the ECR today, and I can do the SCR another time. Explain the ways that soil is important to earth. And so what I do is I teach the students to get a blank sheet of paper and I'm going to move out so that you can see how I do this with my paper. This is my paper right here. It can be notebook paper or blank paper, but I tell them to about 2 inches from the bottom, fold up. So they fold up 2 inches from the bottom. And then they take the top part and they fold down about 2 inches. Now make it about 2 inches because they need a good amount up here. About 2 inches at the top. And then I tell them, now take it and bring the bottom to the top, just like this, and fold that. And now you have this paper like this. Humus. Thanks, Karen. Humus. So the first thing we want to do is we have to know what the prompt says. You know how I am about decoding the prompt. You know how important that is to me. That's the first step in getting a high grade, is knowing what the prompt is asking you to do. So the way I pick up my black pen, and on the STAAR test, the students may use different colored pens. I'm not sure about the SBAC, Nora, but on the STAAR test, you can use different colored pens. So we pick up the black pen, and the first thing we do is we write a Q and an A, and we give it enough room for 2 lines. That's why you have to come down to about 2 inches. And so the question is, what we say to the students is, find the question in the prompt. Find the question in the prompt. And so it says, explain the ways that soil is important to earth, right? And so the question is a what question. It is, what ways? That's what it's asking. What ways? And so when you find the question in the prompt, then you write the question. But let me just stop for a second and say, if it's a why question, then the answer is going to have a because in it. If it is a how question, then the answer is going to have either by or through in it. And if it's a what or which question, the answer will typically have one of your to be verbs. Typically like that. That's usually how you're going to answer it. And so this is a what question. This is a what question. And so we write that question. and we write, what are the ways that soil is important to Earth? That's the question. And it's a what question. And so we turn it around, and our answer is the ways that soil is important to Earth. And because it says ways, that's plural. So it's going to be are, right? And so see the what and the are, right? One of those verbs, right? And then I'm going to answer it right here when I know my answer. When I know my answer. So the reason why I have these other parts folded is what I'm going to do is this is going to be my topic sentence. I've got my blue pen, number 1. And this is going to be down here, my topic sentence, number 2. Now, I've seen students in 3rd grade get a 5 just doing topic sentence number 1. But most of you know me, and you know that I'm going to ask my students to do more than what's expected on the test because, one, I want them to be successful students and writers and citizens, but also because the more they write, even though there's a character count in the STAAR, but the more they write, the more apt they are to get a higher grade. So this is TS number 1 and TS number 2. And I'll add a T in front of TS number 2, which means transitional, a transitional topic sentence. Because I want to teach them to make sure they have transitions there. And down here at the very bottom is going to be the big idea. And this will make sense in a little bit. And I put 3 bullets here. I put 3 bullets here. And then I come up here, because this is a black, my big idea is black. And then I come up here and I will draw a line across. And I teach my students to do this. I'll draw another line across, and then I'll draw a T. And up here, I'll draw a line under TS number 1. I'll draw another line, and then I'll do my T. And these are going to be my CDs. There's my red pen. And this is going to be my CMs. Even with the short constructed response, we do this. But with the short constructed response, we can just stop right here. Right? And so the ways that soil is important to Earth. So I know that this has to say, I've got my blue pen. I know that I'm going to say soil is important. I know I'm going to say soil is important, and I'm going to finish that sentence, and I'm going to say soil is also important. So now I'm organizing my thoughts, and I could start out with also, but I'm going to have my students underline also and circle that first T to make sure that there's a transition in there. And as I go back through my notes, Or if I'm going to go back through the text, it's up to you. I'm going to list my concrete details. The first concrete detail this is the notes I took for my summary, is that I saw was in that section that said plants need soil to grow. That's what it said in that section. It also said animals eat plants, and that was that life-giving section, eat plants. And those are the two that were in there. And also about, you couldn't live. We could add that as well, right? If you wanted to. But what I want to add is I'm thinking about plants need soil to grow and animals eat plants. And again, I can write if I want to, that couldn't live without soil. Those are in that piece that I really like, because there would be no food. But I'm thinking there's no food. Okay, so let's talk about what are some other concrete details I know. That plants need soil to grow and couldn't live without soil because we wouldn't have any food, right? So no plants equals no food. Well, that gets me to thinking that people eat vegetables and fruit. That's a concrete detail. And also, people eat meat. Some people eat meat of animals and fish and which eat plants. So those are concrete details I'm thinking about. Okay, so if there's no food, we have to have food because we eat vegetables and fruit, and we meat of animals and fish, and those animals and fish, a lot of them eat plants. And so I think that's important. So, but that's just me. That's me. I could have stopped right here. I could have stopped right here. I'm just going to teach my students that it's all right for them to have actual CDs also that they're thinking about, because of the plants turn into vegetables and fruit, etc. Then I could go right over here, but I'm kind of on a roll here with my CDs. The other thing that I thought was important is this is all about food, right? This is all about food and eating and surviving. So I can either come down here or I can go across here. And it doesn't matter to me which way you do it. Sometimes the kids, and I let the kids decide too. Some kids like to go right over here. Sometimes the kids like to do all their CDs first. It's up to you, and it's up to the style of writing your kids do. So, but the other thing that I thought was cool for my second paragraph, if I wanted a second paragraph for this composition, it's called a third grade composition. That it doesn't call it an essay. The only thing it requires is that you have your central idea, which will be right up here, and that you have, of course, evidence from the text. But what I'm doing is I'm teaching them to write paragraphs so that they get practice with that and they'll get higher scores. But the other thing I saw on that second page that I thought would be good for a second body paragraph is that sand is used to make concrete. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so concrete, that's pretty, you have to have concrete for houses and buildings and schools and even sidewalks. That's where I see, because remember in the Jane Schaefer, concrete detail comes from four places. What I have, what I have read, what I have seen, what I or someone else has done, what I or someone else has said. And so I've seen the concrete that on these things. The other thing in this paragraph is I could say that clay is used to make pottery. So I'm thinking to myself that the question is asking, what are the ways that soil is important to earth, right? And so these are the ways I think they're important. Certainly this is more important than this, but it's still important. And so over here, I come over here and I say, now why? Why is all of this important? And so I take my pen and I start with right in the middle. And I'll say, well, because plants, right? Soil is important to earth because the soil, right, helps to provide food, right? Helps to provide food. And we need food, and I'll come right up here and I'll put for survival. We need food to survive, or maybe to live. I might say to live, right? That there are all of these nutrients in food that help us with that nourish us. So I think of my classes where I think about being nourished, right? And so this really is about my health and my body. And so I'm just thinking of things that come with all of this, right? The vegetables and fruits, add the nutrients, and all of this is nourishing my body. And down here, I think, okay, so if we have, if concrete helps to build houses, right, and buildings and schools and sidewalks, then it helps us to live comfortably. And I tell my students that I want one in the middle and at least 6 on the side of this middle part. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At least 6. At least 6, right? And so we need concrete for houses and buildings and schools for protection. Protect us. That they shelter us. I don't know that my little 3rd grader would come up with shelter, but maybe, right? And so that's important about concrete. And then for this clay, I'm thinking that this pottery is what we use to decorate. Like my mom has ceramic pottery or clay pottery in the kitchen, right? And it's fun to make, right? It's fun to make pottery. What else is pottery and concrete? I'm thinking to myself, well, if we didn't have these houses, buildings, schools, and sidewalks, we'd still be living in tents. And so it helps us with progress. So I can come back. I don't have to stop. I can come back. And then I'm also thinking about this clay. It's beautiful. See, that's my commentary. It creates beautiful art, right? And so this, I'm looking up here and I look, well, this paragraph is really about the body, and this paragraph is really about our minds. And so of course, I'm doing this all year long with the students, teaching them these T-charts, that when we're reading something, we're looking for evidence, what we call concrete details, and why that evidence is important to the prompt. How does it relate to the prompt? Why is it important to the prompt? And so we're doing this all year long. So this is no big deal for the students because they're used to doing this with me. So the next step, and I'm looking at my chat, so y'all jump in and ask any questions if you have any questions. So now it's time for me to do what Jane called pick and stitch. Now, I really have everything I need to write this. And so as I look at the ways that soil is important to earth is for it helps to provide food, but maybe or to live, that would be a good one. I like this survival, that's a good one. And I think that's the one I'm going to use for my central or controlling central idea. I like this survival. I'm going to use that. Or for survival. And then I really like this one about progress. And then I think this idea about enjoying ourselves, right? Or fun. Yeah. So it's to enjoy life, right? Enjoyment, right? Enjoyment, right? Because we can enjoy and I can think of other things because that kind of came to my mind as I was thinking what I needed. I wanted one more thing. And so I'm going to write the ways that soil is important to earth are for people and animals survival. So I use that one. Progress. So I use this one. And enjoyment. And I use this one. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, soil is important. Now this is about animals and people and animals, right? And plants, right? So soil is important for people, Well, let me start with plants. For plants, people, and animals to live. I'm going to grab that one right there. And that connects with survival, right? And so down here, I'm going to write soil is also important for, I like this word shelter, for shelter and fun. I'm going to grab fun. Okay. Now, this is all my pre-writing and I still have this big idea down here. And when I'm thinking about the big idea, I'm looking at this big idea. I'm asking myself, what is this article really trying to tell me? What is it really about? Because we're talking about how soil, I mean, we walk on the dirt all the time. We play in the dirt, we walk on the dirt, we see dirt everywhere, and we even clean dirt. But it's a lot more important than I thought it was. So it's like something, it reminds me of things we take for granted. And this again, a third grader doesn't need to do all of this down here, but I'm showing you how it can build to fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade from third. See, third could just answer right here, could answer with this and this and get a 5. But why stop there? Let's keep going if we can with the third grader who has been reading and writing for many years with her parents or with her grandparents. And so the next thought I'm having is, dirt is just such a small thing, but it makes such a big impact, right? And so this big idea that I'm having is that small things sometimes have the biggest impact. So I'm thinking about things, big ideas. These are kind of thematic. I've taught my students, what's the lesson you learned about dirt, right? Don't say that they grow plants. No, that's not the lesson. The lesson we learned is that you know that the land is our friend. And we need to take care of our land and appreciate it, right? We need to appreciate what we have. And so these are the lessons that I'm going to teach the students as we um, go through this. And then what I do is I take a piece of notebook paper, but I use our shaping sheet for STAAR right here. If you want it, I'll send it to you if you'd like to have a copy of it. And so then I start writing. And I start with one of the big ideas. And I write, you know, I have to indent. Don't forget to indent. That's that dot. Don't forget to indent your paragraphs. And I'll say, the small things, let me make this a little bit bigger for you. The small things in our lives can make, and I said the biggest impact right here, but maybe I can change my words and make it better. And maybe I write the greatest impact. And that's my first sentence. And it's a thematic sentence. And I'm not doing like, you know, a rhetorical question or anything like that. I don't use hooks. I want to make it relevant. And so I'm not a big fan of the hook, right? But now I've got to write my central idea. The ways that soil is important to earth are for people and animals' survival, progress, and enjoyment. And y'all know me, I'm always talking about grammar with my students. And so we're talking about this items in a series in the commas. I'm going to circle the commas. I'm going to make sure we circle the end punctuation and underline and circle the caps and all of that kind of stuff as we're practicing, right? And then I'm going to come with and so boom, I've done my central idea. Then I come down to my topic sentence, and I'm going to look here, right here, this top one, right here, and I'm going to write, and I'm going to make this a little bit, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Whoops. That wasn't zooming out. This is zooming out. Okay, so I'm going to, don't forget to indent, and I'm going to write soil is important for people and animals to live. Now, I'm not going to put live right here because what happens is the students think that it has to be, every sentence has to be on a different line. So I'm going to put live right here, right? And there's my topic sentence. And then I'm going to look at my concrete details and commentary. And my concrete details are going to come next. And I'm going to write plant. I'm going to grab this one right here. Plants need soil to grow. And I can stop it right there with just a period if I want. But if I'm teaching my students compound sentences, I would say combine these two ideas into a compound sentence and write, and I'm going to grab, I grab this one and I'm going to grab this one, and animals eat plants to survive. Period. That's my first concrete detail sentence. Even though I have two concrete details, remember the concrete, it's a 2 plus, it's 2 or more sentences, right? Now, I like this stuff. I like this down here. This is what I'm going to pick this one. I used it. I'm going to use that one. I like this down here. So I'm going to write people eat vegetables and fruit, but I have to connect it to soil and plants, right? That come from plants and soil. Also, and this is where I'm trying to get my voice to come in a little bit, people eat hamburgers, bacon, and fish and chips period. Now, there's my second concrete detail, and I even added an extra one right there. So now I'm ready for my commentary, and I'm going to say, oh, I'm looking over here. What am I going to say, right? I'm going to talk about this nutrients, right? All these nutrients help our health and come from plants and animals. I want to say who, but I guess I should say which eat all of these nutrients, help our health, and come from plants. And animals, comma, and animals eat plants. I'm thinking I'm going to fix this in my online, because what I'm trying to say is and animals eat plants and we eat the animals, right? And animals. So I'm going to fix this. I'm thinking to myself, I need to fix this a little bit later. See it, because this isn't my final draft. This is actually my rough draft, right? So I just want to be real here with you. It's not going to be the perfect essay. This is kind of, something's weird here. I got to fix this, but I'm going to keep going because I can fix it in my final draft. So we must have soil to grow plants. In order to nourish, I'm going to use my word nourish from here, our bodies and the bodies of animals. So I need to work on my commentary, but I'm close. And then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to write another paragraph. I'm going to write soil. Don't forget to indent. Soil is also, there it is right there, my transitional topic sentence, important for shelter and food. My topic sentence, concrete detail. I'm going to grab this right here. Sand is used to make concrete. I'm going to add, right? Concrete is used to build houses, buildings, schools, and sidewalks. Got that, right? Now, how am I going to bring into this thing about the clay? I'm also clay. Maybe I do a positive here that my teacher told me try to put in a positive in one of your sentences. A type of soil, a type of soil is used to make pottery. Remember that the period goes inside the quotation mark, the comma goes inside the quotation mark. I'm going to write, okay, so now I've got my concrete details. I'm going to write if, I can start here, if we didn't have concrete, I'm looking over here on the right-hand side of here, right? Or clay, a dependent clause, we wouldn't, I'm going to grab this, live, because I used schools, and work as comfortably Okay, now what am I going to do with this clay? I've already used enjoy, but I've got to come up with something other than enjoy. I don't want to use the same word. Or be able to, why don't I say create some of the most beautiful art right there to decorate right there our homes. And of course, I could make that into a couple of sentences. That's a long sentence for a little one. So if we didn't have concrete, we wouldn't live and work as comfortably. If we didn't have clay, we could do it that way, right? Even though it's 2+1, sometimes you have to pull in another one, right? So soil helps us to enjoy our lives. I'm going to use that twice, but I don't think Miss Lewis will mind if I just have enjoyment up in the thesis up here and then remind them down here again. I think she'd be okay with that, although she does kind of tend to get irritable at times with me. And so we have that. And so for my conclusion, if I'm writing an ECR, then I think what I wrote up here is the small things in our lives can make the greatest impact. So I think I like this thing about things being taken for granted here. But I also have some leftover commentary, like the mine, right? The mines. So in my mind, I've got my black pen here, and I'm thinking that soil, don't forget to indent, soil, I'm going to use nourishes again, nourishes both our bodies, I'm going to grab minds, and minds, no comma, even though we often take it for granted. So I got minds. Only one I didn't use is protect. Maybe when I type it up, it'll be ready. But that is the process. Now I've got to type it. And we started an hour ago. And so there we are. Let me get Regina's. Okay. So what are you thinking? Tell me what you're thinking. I'm going to leave it up just a little bit because some of you might be copying, and then I'll stop sharing and get off of here. But what are some thoughts you're having? Why don't y'all come on video with me and talk to me? What are you thinking? What do you have questions about?
It, from what I'm seeing, is like a teacher would have to really be like practicing this with the students, because it will take a lot of independence, so they won't have someone there to kind of remind them. So really practicing what that looks like, since they'll have to then type it into the computer, like me talking to some of my teachers, they're saying like some of their students are writing, but then when it comes to putting it into the computer, they're putting in something totally different. So that's what stood out to me, is like lots of practice with this to really build that independence and trusting them to follow the process.
Yes, yes. You're exactly right, Regina. Practice is the key. And I mean, that's why I wanted to start this in January. I mean, I've started in August when we're talking about um, I mean, we do all of this even when we're not doing a test. We do stuff like this. So it's just writing. This is how we write when we're teaching students how to, what are the concrete details you're going to use, and what is your analysis or what is your commentary? How are you going to do? And you're going to pull your topic sentence and your commentary and your concluding sentence from your green side, right? And then we're going to look at the big ideas for your introduction and conclusion. So yeah, that's so practice, practice, practice is really important. Okay, good, good, good. So Karen, that's good because of the kids. Yeah, and even for the fifth graders who have to actually get this, write a little bit more, this is helpful. So think about it when they started in third grade. And again, in third grade, they would just give you this top part. That would be enough for composition for the top part. But if you have them practice all of it, just practice, 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 then like Regina says, it requires practice for them to know the process.